guys, what's going on? Nate here with Rosen Performance.
Hey guys, this is Marcus of MT Performance, and today we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about injury prevention. How do we as strength and conditioning professionals prevent injuries, Nate?
Unfortunately, we can't actually prevent an injury.
Of course, we have the obvious physical benefits of why we strength and condition our athletes: increased muscle size, increased strength, energy system development, and even we've got our more obvious benefits of how to reduce the risk of injury, like tendon resiliency, increasing strength, increasing muscle surrounding our joints, increase our ability to absorb force utilizing them. Research has shown that strength and conditioning, resistance training specifically, has been shown to increase your bone mineral density within our athletes. But specifically what Nate and I are going to discuss is motor control, how proper movement patterns can accumulate and work together to reduce our risk of injury within our athletes and within our training population.
Diving a little deeper, talking about our movement patterns, there is an optimal way in your movement patterns that you can train, and if you are training the wrong movement pattern, that can have a direct effect on your performance on the court, right? If you are moving in a way that your knee is angled in, so a valgus knee position, you are going to lose power in your jump. And that's not even talking about the risk that you're putting on your knee as well.
Right. So, our bodies are structured. Everyone's body is structured a little bit differently, but that being said, there's still optimal movement patterns that we all, for the most part, share. And when we aren't moving optimally, so like Nate's example with that knee valgus, when we're experiencing some knee valgus, aka knee cave, I call it stanky leg, during like a jump or something like that, you might even be jumping high still. That being said, that doesn't mean that we're jumping as high as is physically possible for you. We're experiencing some energy leaks. Science is happening all around us, whether you like it or not, when we're playing sports. So, if we're experiencing that energy leak, for example, on a jump, then you may not be jumping as high as physically possible.
All right, guys, here I want to start with an example of the takeoff on a jump here. So how the top non-optimal movement, the top is the non-optimal movement, and the bottom is more of an optimal movement here. How these compare and contrast performance-wise. I'm going to link these up so they run at the same time so you can really get a feel for the difference between the top, the wrong one, the bottom, how we want to move. Boom. So you see that right there. Right as I take off at the top, you can kind of see this little line. If I drew a line on my knee right there, see that line? Boom. And then boom. Non-optimal versus there, and optimal. So anybody who's taken a physics class knows that the Newton's third law, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So the action here is that I am putting force into the ground by jumping, by loading up for that jump, and then that force is being put right back into me. As you can see on the bottom one, I'm actually getting a little higher in the air, and I promise I'm not even trying to do that. You can see where my head gets compared to the top, where my head barely gets off of the screen with that non-optimal jump right there. So that force that I'm putting into the ground when I load up for the jump is not getting put back through me as efficiently because of the alignment of my joints, again, on the top versus if we look at the bottom when I'm loading up, more of an optimal alignment there. Next example of Nate performing a depth drop, the top being the poor example again, the bottom being the better example, the optimal movement pattern. I wanted to take a little bit of a step back away from direct performance and more so talk about the injury mitigation here in this video. Obviously, the most important factor in performance, in my opinion, is going to be consistency, and we can't be training consistently or practicing consistently if we're getting hurt all of the time. So here's an example here at these depth drops of how improper movement patterns done over time can lead to what might seem to be acute injuries here. So again, top, that bad example, bottom, that better example. Watch as he lands, he's absorbing that force, and boom, those knees are caving, he's losing his full foot contact with the ground, whereas on the bottom, it looks like equal pressure under big toe, little toe, and heel, and his knees are in proper alignment there. So let's keep this going as I explain a little bit more. Very rarely in sports do we have a true acute injury, meaning like one thing that happens in a quick burst of time that causes someone to miss time in their game. A lot of times these acute injuries, even though they might seem acute, are due to improper movement patterns over time. So if we're always practicing these movement patterns improperly, like in the top example there, then we might have certain muscles that are overcompensating for other underactive muscles that have become weak and really can't use them. Maybe our knee might start tracking improperly within the joint compared to how it's supposed to be tracking. And really, we're just putting ourselves more and more at risk with every improper rep, which is why it's super important, again, to be under the watchful eye of a trainer, or at the very least to be taking this ownership in your own training patterns here. So continuing from my point before with the depth drop example of Nate, here's an example of me performing a back squat. Again, these injuries aren't going to happen from one bad rep, 2 bad reps, maybe even hundreds of bad reps. However, it's that accumulation of a lifetime of training of improper movement patterns, again, that top version versus the bottom version, that can lead to these seemingly acute injuries, right? So non-contact injuries, say you're running in practice and you put your foot in the ground and you cut wrong, and then something just goes. Again, that might seem like a totally random incident, but a lot of times that's an accumulation of our poor movement patterns over time, causing imbalances, causing other muscles to compensate. It can lead to these seemingly acute injuries, although they're due to chronic improper movement patterns, again, as shown in that top example there. And one last time, the reasoning behind focusing on these movement patterns doesn't all have to be quote-unquote boring. I don't know how injury mitigation is boring personally, but some people may find it that way. The cool thing is, though, you're going to be able to lift more weights if you're moving properly. You're going to be able to lift heavier because your body's working more efficiently, right? You're going to be able to not only lift heavier, but run faster, jump higher, be an overall stronger, more resilient athlete. Again, if we're focusing on these proper movement patterns like shown in the bottom, as opposed to that improper movement pattern shown at the top. This knee valgus example of the knee caving is one of, hundreds probably of issues that could arise in movement patterns. So I don't want you guys to think this is the only one we're looking at as strength and conditioning professionals. However, this one's kind of obvious to the naked eye, which is why Nate and I really wanted to use these examples specifically today.
All right, I know that may seem like we just talked about quite a few things there. However, really it's just exemplifying why it's really important to have not only a watchful eye from a good trainer that you might have, but also for you guys yourselves, the athletes, to have some extreme ownership here. You guys need to be able to pay attention to these things too, because not only can trainers be expensive having them all the time, but they're not watching every little thing you do. They're not going to be at your house when you jump down the flight of stairs and land. That's something that you guys as athletes have to take ownership in your own performance, in your own health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What you do, how you do it, does actually matter, right? It's not so much about just showing up and working out with your trainer or doing whatever it is. How you focus on that training objective for the day has direct implication on your performance, on reducing the risk of injury. So like Marcus was talking about, having that ownership and really just owning it for the day, right? You just want to make sure that everything you do has a specific point and you're focused and you're locked into that point.
Absolutely. Every rep counts. One little rep done improperly, that could accumulate, your body could learn to adapt to that pattern, and then it's harder work for a strength and conditioning professional to get you out of those patterns as opposed to just instilling those proper movement patterns from the get-go. But I believe that's it for today. That's all we've got. So until next time, thanks guys.
Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, find a way.